Right guys, we have a beaut of a video for you today. We are going to show you how we got on building up this. Yes, what is it? You can see what it is. RC10 B7. It's the carpet spec, so it has the gear, diff, the roll bars and the likes. Things we liked on it, there's some really nice things we liked on it. A couple of things which we think Associated just need to get sorted out on it, which might be the early production runs, we don't know. But look at that. We are looking forward to giving that a run. So watch on. It's a long video, but it's a worthwhile watch. You won't make some of the errors that we made, and you could save yourself a few quid as well, because we made a couple of errors building it up, which were pretty obvious in hindsight. Here we go. Bag one. Right guys, step one is the steering. Now ironically, this actual steering bell crank assembly, from what I can see, is the same as on the B6. We're going to build up a stock, but I probably will put one of the upgrades. I'll put the alloy bell cranks on here. We've got all the bearings here. We're obviously going to need a few of them, but I'm going to put them to one side so we don't lose them. So first of all, we need to take these bits off here. I'm not going to show you me doing this on every stage, but of course we just need to clean off these flashings here. Sometimes it leaves a little mark, so I just use a sharp knife to take that off there. So I'm just going to clean up all these bits. So the first step is we need to put these bearings in here. I always put the blue face to the outside. Some people say the quality of the Associated bearings isn't great, so you can potentially oil them, but these ones don't feel too bad, so I'm going to leave that. It's got 4 bearings to go in there. Then we have the 8mm ball studs to go on here. Make sure you get this the right way around. It shows you on here the top, and it actually comes in here with the ball studs on the front, and they have a 1mm washer in here. This is all to do with your bump steer. I'm going to just build this up exactly as kit and then go from there. I have in the past actually polished these. I'm not going to polish them for this, but I might do it at a later stage. In fact, a lot of people use the titanium studs, but that's extra cost, which we're not going to go with for the moment. So we just need to put one in there and one in there. Now guys, we've got them in there, but we actually ran into a problem straight away, and I hope this is not indicative of the quality control on these new kits. This should be a 2mm socket, and it doesn't fit. I can't even see, I don't know if you guys can see, it doesn't even look like there's a hex. Well, there might be a hex machine in there, but it's smaller. So I've just whipped a spare one out that I've got so I can carry on with the build. Next thing, just need to put the bearings in here. As you know, this actually is the front, so this is the way the steering actually goes on the car. So I've then just put these bushings through the bottom of the rack. That one goes through there like that. You have the 2 holes on that side, like so. Then exactly the same on the other side, but just make sure you get the 2 hole on the right side. I'm not 100% convinced I have got it on the right side, but yes it is, yes it is. So we've got them in there. Now these can be pretty much done up almost as tight as you can, but you want to make sure it's free. Now the way I test that, does it fall under its own weight? Yes, it does. If it doesn't, if it sticks up there, just back it off until it just falls down nice and free like that. Then we have the smaller ball stud, or the smallest ball stud in this pack goes in there. And then we've got the new front ball stud mount. It's got 3 holes on it. This time we use a middle hole, longest ball studs with the only a 1mm washer under here. Obviously with the B6 we machine these down quite regularly to get more, or make the ball stud lower. I'm not sure if that's something we'll do on these or not. And I always finish everything off with a hand driver. What you could also do on this, if you wanted, you could run the bolts into the ball studs, even into these other holes, so that if you're at the track you need to change them, they go in nice and easy. I'm not going to do it just at this stage because you guys don't need to see that. Then we have the new roll bar design. Now these little holders go on the roll bar like so, with that sort of what's it called, that sort of chamfered part, or not the chamfered, the smaller shoulder goes to the inside. When a little grub screw just goes in there to just clamp it up, don't over tighten it. And these set screws or grub screws should face downwards like so, and right to the edge there. Don't need to over tighten them, just to clamp the roll bar. Same with the other side, like so. Might want to move over a little bit, we'll do that in a minute. We then have to mount our steering onto our front upper bulkhead, whatever you want to call it. And we have these bushings, these top hat bushings. Now this is where you change your height of your rack, depending on the caster or the total kick up at the front of the car. Again, we're just going to build everything up as kit just to make it easy for everyone, and then any tuning we can do at a later stage. So we put that in there, just tighten them up. I found the tolerance on these actually really good. You can just tighten up as much as you can. Don't over tighten them, of course. Now look, that rack is just free. So if that was sticking, I don't know if I can even make it stick with these. No, they're just as, don't want to tighten them anymore as I'll strip the thread. See, that rack just falls easily. It just falls easily under its own weight. And anyone that's actually, don't need that bearing yet. Anyone that's built one of these knows I've just made a mistake. I needed to put the anti-roll bar in here, and these actual clips, very fiddly to show you guys on camera, actually hold it in there. So I just need to back one of them off to get it in there. The instructions aren't 100% clear, of course, on that, but that is what you do, and that goes in there with the grub screw at the bottom so you can get to it, and then we just tighten that up. Don't over tighten it. That just wants to move freely in there, and that, I think, that's bag one done. Right guys, we're on to bag two, and we get the lovely new chassis. Definitely got a little bit more machining in the sides here, but it's obviously a very similar sort of design, but it is a different shape, narrower for the wider wishbones. So next step is we are going to use our front assembly. It goes on the front of the chassis here. Now this is where it is different to the old Associated. You've got these shims which adjust the height of the mount, and it's nice. You didn't used to get a metal one as standard, but it's nice. So that goes in there. Screws, 14mm screws in the back holes there. Now I'm just going to put one of these wedges in, so I haven't tightened those bolts up completely all the way. And it says in the manual to slide it in from the back, but I'm going to do that. But I actually think, talking to some other people, you actually want to slide them in from the front, but we will confirm that later on. I think it makes it easier to adjust at a later date. And this is one of the things I think we will include, get a spare one in our new setup box holder. Which, guys, if you haven't seen, this was the old B6.4. It's got all your pills, all your other inserts, and I think we'll modify that for some of the other bits to go in here, probably those steering links on the front as well, the Ackerman links on the front as well. On Facebook, we'll leave a link in the description, and eBay, sorry. And you can also see why we put the grub screw in from the bottom, because you can then get to it. Right, so next step is to put these foam pads in here. I'm actually just going to leave that for the moment. I'd like to put all that in when I do my wiring all together. Won't do that just yet. But we put in the, it's only 11 gram weight in this car. And there's no, looks like there's something that will go in there at a later stage, but we haven't got anything to go in at the moment. And you've then got these tiny, tiny, tiny screws which we need to thread lock in. Just for ease of build, I'm actually just going to thread lock these later, which shows those 4 screws in there. Done. Now, chassis side rails. I mean, they're a similar design or style, aren't they, to the original one on the B6 style car, but they're just a little bit modified with a different battery mount. But the nice thing with this car is the 8mm bolts that you use to hold it in are all in one packet, so you haven't got to sort through and find the correct size bolt. So let's get those on. Right, so they're all on, and we certainly noticed the tolerance of this. Obviously it's a new car, the moulds are all nice and tight, but you've got to line them up perfectly. There's no slop or movement on there. The last thing, I'm just going to put this fan mount in. I think it just slots into there. And then we'll just snug that screw up. That is that step done. Right, so the next step is the servo. Now, I'm actually not going to mount a servo in this car because I actually want to whip it out one of the other cars. But what I will do is I'll just make up the servo link, which is a simple case of screwing in the, what length is it, 12mm, call it grub screw, set screw, whatever it's called. 1mm washer on there, and then you just snug up that link. When you set the servo up, you can adjust this if need be. And I'm just going to put that to one side. We'll put that in the car later. Now, as I said, I'm not going to put a servo in. When I do put the servo in, I actually don't use these standard horns. I find that they actually strip quite easily, so I stick a metal servo horn on there. What we will just do, we will just put these screws for the which hold the servo in place just on the servo mount, which is a nice one-piece one now. It's not the... Well, it was nice you had alloy posts in the other car, didn't you? And you can't actually put them in because they had a second locating hole on there, whereas this has only got one hole to go on the chassis there. So, looks like they're not universal. We're just going to put these on here, just so I don't lose them. And then, to put it onto the chassis, it's just two 10mm bolts through here. Okay, guys, so we've put the servo mount in there, but I think another problem I seem to have found, these are 10mm bolts. There's 10mm bolts in the manual. These are 10mm, but they only get to about there, and they just bottom out. If I go any further, I'm going to strip that thread. So I think they might need shorter bolts, whether that hole needs drilling out more. I'm not sure what that problem is. So I'm going to leave that like that. But if you get to this stage, make sure you don't strip the threads there. You might need to put short bolts or drill them out. As I haven't put the servo in, I'm not too worried. I will look at that when we do the radio install. If you want to see a radio install video, then let me know, but we won't do it in this video. So now putting the front upper, I don't know, front upper top plate, I think that's what they call it. We have three 16mm bolts that hold that on. The old car's 4. That's straightforward enough. So we've got that plate on. Now this is one thing you do need to check, guys. That steering rack, is it still free? Mine, just at the top of the throat, it's just the tight. Now I'm not going to worry about that because I think you'd never really get to that actual angle of steering anyway. But if it's not free like that, you need to look underneath here where those cap head bolts sit. It catches. You need to just take a small amount of material away there. So that seems okay to me. We may just look at that once we've got the car together, see how free the steering feels. Of course, that might free up once it's used, but make sure. I mean, if that stick there, you definitely need to do it. But that seems okay. Right, so now we get on to more of the exciting parts. We're actually going to mount the arms on the car. To me, they look and feel a little bit of a different material to the B6 ones. That's a B6 one. Perhaps it's just a shiny material, different type of mould, or the mould's in you, I don't know. So same as the B6, we just need to put this little screw in the back here. In actual fact, with the way this car now works, I don't know if that's totally necessary. So this is, what's that, the right one? Yeah, it's the right one, isn't it? Don't think they're marked, but the shocks mount to the rear, same again as the B6. And on this, you haven't got the brace plate which went across there. Whether it's a good thing or not, who knows? So we'll put that one in there. And we'll put that one in there. Like that. Now we've got 4 grub screws. Basically they clamp down on the pivot pin, so the pivot pin is stationary and the arms rotate on the pin. It says thread lock these. Now it was the same process on the B6, and I never ever thread locked them. They never came undone, so I'm not going to bother to thread lock these. Are they covered by the bumper? Oh, I can get to them to thread lock them later anyway. See, look at that, it's falling under its own weight still. So is that one. So that's now pivoting on the plastic. There we go. If it wasn't pivoting freely, then you just use a reamer like this. 3mm reamer just goes through those arms. So the next step is to put on the anti-roll bar mounts. I've always just put the grub screw in, and they just need to sit flush with the front of the roll bar, like so. Same on the other side. And it wasn't quite flush. It is now. Then you have the anti-roll bar links. They just pop on. One pops on front of the arm there, and the other one pops on the top like so. Now to cover another good little test point. Are the arms off? They're connected with the roll bar. Does that drop up and down freely? Yes, that does. That's all good. Front bumper on there. 2 14mm screws through there. Now we're onto the shock tower. I'm going to mount it in the middle hole as per the instructions, and it says to thread lock these. I don't really think you need to thread lock them because they're nylocked on at the end anyway. I'm not going to bother to thread lock them. And the only thing I have found with these cars, these wear really quickly. I have upgraded, I think, some Avid ones of those which were better. Tighten them up. Now, flicking on this front shock tower protector looks a bit fiddly. So how do we actually do it? No point reading instructions, is there? We don't do that sort of thing, do we? So, no, flick it off like that. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do, yeah, line it a top up like that, and you've got to press firmly down on the cover. And it does clip on. You feel like you're going to break it, but it does go on. You can see we've located those top bits, then we push down that cover. God knows what it's going to be like to try and get the thing off. To change the shock position, should we try? Oh. No. Oh, actually it comes off really easy, he says. Yeah, well, that's obviously come off to a degree. We can then probably just prise it off. Yeah, so it does come off really easily. Perhaps not one of Associated's best designs. I can see these being broken when people are building them up, but we'll do that again. So put it down actually on there. He says. On there like that, and then it clips over like that. They're going to break, aren't they? Oh, hadn't clipped it on top there. So that's, I don't know. We'll see. Perhaps one of the poorer designs on the kit. We'll see. We'll see. So shock tower mounting. Bottom bolts are 10mm, and so are the top ones if you are not using the front wing mount. But we're going to put the front wing mount on it. And then the top wing mount just goes in there like. Bag 2 done. Bag 3, probably the most exciting part of the build for me. Basically, we've got the front axle assembly, and it's got this new KPI kingpin inclination change on it. And look, you get all these 3 different sets of front hubs with it. Now, whether we include storage of these in our setup box, I don't know, it might take up a bit too much room, make the box too big. So we're going to use as per the kit. This video is not about the setup, it's just about building the car up. We're going to use the KPI 2s, which are these ones. So first simple steps, put the bearings in. Got told off on my last video. Put these bearings in the wrong way around, I think, on one of these. The blue seals tend to go to the outside. It's meant to give you a better seal against dust. We've then got these axles, which go through there. I think they're the same as the B6. Then we have 6mm bolt to go through there. You should thread lock this. Please do actually thread lock this. This one needs to be done up nice and tight because you can't usually get to this to tighten it up anyway. So I've not thread locked it. I will do. The main reason is because I haven't got any thread lock in the workshop. It's upstairs in the office where I do a lot of other messing about with RC cars. Then we have the steering arms, which I don't know if these are the same as the B6 or not. We then have the shorter of the 2 ball studs, goes through there with a nut on the bottom. We then have 2 8mm that then secure that to your KPI, whatever you want to call it. Front axle hub carrier. Not really sure what the correct name for it is. I mean, it's actually a hub carrier really, isn't it? Because that's the hub. That's one side done. Just need to do exactly the same with the other side. There we go, one left, one right built up. Now we come to the caster block. I don't know what you call it. Yeah, it is a caster block, isn't it really? They're marked on them, left and right. So we will start off with the left one. These are obviously universal, it just depends which way up you put them. So we've got a long ball stud to go through with a 2mm washer. 2mm washer through there like that, with a nut on the bottom. This then bolts on, it may all be coming off here in a minute when I built it wrong, but I think it goes on like that. Once the instructions are mega clear, and then 2 8mm hold that into there. And the nice thing is they did put all the 8mm in one bag because there was quite a lot of them for this build, so that was quite nice. So we then have these pivot balls and it looks like they just push in there like that. They go in there nice and easily. Quite like that design. And that one goes in there. Basically that means so that you can get that angle there. The angle will change a little bit, I think, won't it? So this is the left. We've then got a small screw to go in there, which is a steering stop screw. Never used them before, but we'll put it in. 1.5mm into there. I'm going to set it flush again, as it says on there. Well, if it's flush, it isn't actually doing anything, is it? So it's just a tuning aid. But we'll put it in as per the kit. Then we have the caster insert blocks. They look similar again to what we had before. We're going to put +2 degrees in, so the tab up adds caster. So we've got the tab up there, push it in there like that. Nice fit in there, and again, nice, the storage box holds those nicely. And we also have a grub screw which goes in the bottom there, which holds that caster insert in place. You don't want to over tighten this because you'll strip the thread or you'll deform the plastic. So just as you feel it start to go tight, that's fine. You can test to see if it's held it. Can you push out your block? Oh, I can, so it needs to go a little tighter. There you go, I can feel that now. Will it push out? No, it won't push out. That's that in. Then we've got our block goes in there like that, and the same as the old style B6, you have these blue top hat type washers which just allow axle height change. They go in there like so, and then where you've got the longer bush, you have the longer bolt. Just going to start that one off, and then we'll do the top, and then we've got the top one goes in there. So we're going to tighten, don't over tighten them. Nice free movement. Associated on a lovely design here, I think. Let's check, is that free? Yes it is, because there were some issues with this being too tall and it nipped up, but that's fine. Look at that, there's no movement on that. There's a small amount of play up and down, much less than on the old car. Forgot to press the record button to show how do you fit these in, but it's straightforward. You've just got the pin goes through there. There's a washer, a little black washer that's with the sprue for the inserts for the caster, and then there's that little screw that goes in the back there to stop it moving. And again, just check everything moves freely. It all drops under its own weight. The steering moves about. These are all free. If they're not, you'll need to just ream things out or just make a bit more clearance. And as you can see, this KPI, what it is, they're not in line. So when this rotates, it just gives a different, it gives like a jacking force almost, from what I can understand. So it'll be interesting to see how that handles. Obviously one of the biggest changes on this car. So that is the front. Pretty much done, isn't it? Move on to the back. Bag 4, probably the quickest step on the whole car, is just the rear wishbones. Obviously they are slightly different. We have 3 holes now in the wishbone, all on the same side. Very quickly we'll put that grub screw, or the set screw, whatever they call it, into there, and it needs to protrude by about 11mm. Then on the C block, it recommends the kit setting is all the way down and all the way out for the front. I haven't done it yet, but what I tend to do there is just colour in the number there so that you can see it easier. I will do that to all these pills when we've finished the kit, and of course this is exactly the same pills as on the B6. And we have now got some thread lock, so I'm going to put a small amount of thread lock on these. That is the mount on. What we now have is spacers which actually go in front and behind of the wishbone, whereas before you just had one spacer. You now have 2 to use. So we're going to put one in front and one behind as per the kit. That then goes in there. Same on that side. So we are now on to our differential. Now just look at the difference compared to the older diff. The cross pin's much smaller actually, but the volume of oil you can just see is much bigger. And nice to see, we actually get an alloy cover plate, whereas as standard on the old car you only got a plastic one. And I have checked, the old covers do not fit the new diff, so you can't put your old metal covers on here. Not that you'd ever want to, of course. So our first step is to place that in there, wash it in there, seals it up, stops all the oil coming out. Then we need to push the diff halves. Now these are different, and this is one of the things we've been looking at, how you can use some of the older bits in your new car and vice versa. So we just put a little bit of black grease. I'm not worried about using too little, plenty on there, and then just turn it through there. We want that to go through there without splitting that O-ring. Just wipe that excess grease off, and then we'll do the same on the diff cover. Same one there, just turn that through there like so. Then we have these little diff shims which go on the back of our outputs, and the other one on the back of there. Now what I'm actually just going to do, little tip, is I'm just going to cut these threads into here. So I'm just going to use these 4 screws just to make it easy to put the diff together in a minute. So I've just run those, so we just run those threads into there, makes that easier to put that together. Now diff oil, it doesn't say, I can't see it in the manual where it actually says which diff oil to use, but it's obviously the heaviest weight oil that you get in the box, which is 30k. 30k 4 gears to me sounds very heavy, but let's see. There's pins onto there. This one is easy. These ones can sometimes be a bit harder. Now there's so much room in that diff case that it went on there nice and easy. But what I'm actually going to do, before I put these now, are these the planet gears or are these the sun gears? These are the sun gears, aren't they? I will just put a small amount of oil on that back face, because if you think that's going to be on there, and it just helps that to turn around. So that is our 2 halves to the diff done. Now we need to make up the spider gear assembly. Obviously always make sure you're doing this in a clean environment. Just got to line it up in there. There we go, it drops nicely in. And it actually feels smooth now. And you can see, I don't know if you've ever seen the old gears, but you can see there's so much bigger volume. In fact, we've even got one of the old gears here, and you can see there's a more space around this bit here compared to there. That's got more of a chamfer, that's square, so there's much bigger diff oil capacity. So let's fill this up. We want to cover the cross pins. Now, because this is quite thick oil, you need to let it settle for a little while. So we'll leave that and we'll come back in a minute. So we've let that sit for a little while, and I don't know if you can see, it's quite difficult with completely clear oil, but that's nicely covered the cross pins. You don't want to overfill it, because it won't work. The diff will just almost lock up, and it'll actually, have seen them almost explode the oil out of them. Now it's a case of putting the gasket over the top, metal cover like that. I'm just going to feel that round, check it feels okay. Yep, it's quite stiff, but it will be with 30k in it. And then because I cut these threads in earlier, these go in really nicely, and you just want to do these up in a cross pattern so they're nicely snugged up. There we have one diff built up. Looks like there's a nicer gasket on that as well. It looks more substantial than what we had before, and just as a comparison, that is the old geared diff, so you can see how much more capacity there is for oil in that. And look, another 3D printed item that we've done. We have actually done some gearbox holder boxes. Does a new diff go in it? Oh, It's a bit of a tight fit. Actually, no, it does go in there fine. Oh, that's good. So, again, guys, if you want one of these, we'll leave a link in the description. Right, so we're now on to bag 6. Lots of bits in here. We've got the 5-gear gearbox. Does remind me of the wheel speed. If you haven't followed or haven't seen the wheel speed cars, I did have an X-Ray version, and it does look very similar with the 5-gear gearbox. Perhaps they've copied them a little bit, I don't know. But I believe the motor still sits further backwards than in a wheel speed car. Anyway, we digress. Bearings into the 3 idler gears. I was just cursing because I thought there should have been 4 idler gears. Forgot that that's one of the gears of the 5-gear gearbox. And then we put one in there, one on there, and I'm hoping this is going to spin nice and freely and won't need any fettling. That feels alright. Then we have the, I call it the lay shaft. Is that what it's called? I think it is. That goes in there like that. That does feel no fettling needed. And that on there like that. So I've just had a look about lubrication of this. Now it says in the book to put some diff lube, which you don't get with the car. Now I'm just going to put a small amount of this black grease on there. It doesn't need a lot. That'll soon work its way round like that. Perhaps put a little bit more on there, and then we'll put a little bit on the diff gear. In fact, that's probably a bit too much. Oh well, let's put that in there. Then we will close up the case. Bearing is actually in there. Just going to feel that. Going to feel for any notches. There is none, so that's really nice. Sometimes you get a little bit of a notch when you build the gearbox up, but that's good. So we've got 16mm bolts to go in here. One, pretty obvious where they go, isn't it? 1, 2, 3 and 4. Right, all the bolts are tightened up. Let's just check that that's free still, and yes it is. So that is the majority of the 5-gear gearbox done. So on to the anti-roll bar links now. Now a tip, don't throw any packaging out or any of the old sprues and things that these are on, because I nearly threw these out. These are attached to one of the other sprues. I think it was attached to, I don't know which one, and I thought it was just an offcut to start with. Nearly threw it out, but good job we didn't. So that goes on the back of there like that with a couple of 10mm screws. These are the only 10mm in this rear part, or in that pack anyway. Just helps them to align nicely there. And the roll bar, the same as the front. We've got these, I think they're a bit fiddly, but I suspect probably when they're on the car they're quite good. So I'm going to put one on, slides into there like so, yeah. And then the other one goes on, obviously that way around, like so. And then just do, in fact I'm going to put them to the bottom. Just change that one to the bottom. And there we are. Drops nicely, no sideways movement. And then we'll just pop on the ball studs. I've already put on the, I've already started the grub screws and all this. Tighten them up, flush with the end of the roll bar, because we're all going to have to buy new sets of roll bars for these cars. There we go, and there are the links that pop on the end. Edit. It actually says these want to be facing away from the gearbox. Again, I suspect that's just to make it easier to change, because you'll have access from the rear of the car. Makes sense now, doesn't it? So we can now put the diff in. Just found something very interesting with trying one of the old diffs in it, but we'll save that for another video. So we've got the diff cams. It says too high. This basically adjusts the height of the diff. You get another set with it as well there for the parts setup box. So we'll put that in there like so. Bit of a tight fit, but that looks good. Let's just feel that. It feels a little geary, but actually it feels nice and smooth. And it does, shall I put a little bit more? I'm going to just put a small amount of the black grease on there again. Again, I think I've probably got a little heavy-handed on that. I'm going to work that round. Yeah, that's a bit too much. Don't put quite that much on, guys. Probably about a quarter of that or half of that. Now we need to fit 4 mils of spacers in here, and it's going to go on the middle hole there. That goes on there. There's no screw to hold it on like you had in the last one. And then the cover goes on, nice location peg there, and that should all lock in really nicely. Let's feel to see how that's free. That's nice. Got 8 mil, or was it 6 mil? 8 mil for the front. Don't get these the wrong length. If you get that one there the wrong length, that will drive through into your gearbox and you'll wreck it. It's the only 8 mil bolt in this pack. It's the only one that I could see anyway. There we are, that is the gearbox screwed together. Feels nice and smooth. Now, just be aware, there's a chamfer on this blue top link mount, which actually makes it look like there's a gap. And it's only a gap just at the front here, because I thought that wasn't sealed down right, but that is okay. Don't over tighten that, because you'll strip the threads. So the last bit here now, we are going to put the D block on. We're going to go, where are we going? We're going down and in. Basically that's giving us the minimum towing that you can get on this car, which is going to be 1 degree. Again, we're not going to talk about setup in this one. It's got apparently a little bumper, which it says optional rear bumper included. Quite nicely. And I've actually put it in the opposite way around. I thought this was the bottom, but actually this is the bottom, so I need to just move these pills around. So that goes on the bottom of the gearbox there, and then you have the bumper to go on there, and then you have these longest screws that you've got in this pack, which locks it all together. Now, I was a little bit skeptical on this, because can anyone remember X-Ray did this? They changed round the way their rear D block mounted, and they mounted the gearbox rather than the chassis. And surely it's got to be not as strong, but this goes all the way into the metal top link mount, not just the gearbox half, where the X-Ray one just went into the bottom of the gearbox, and that was where you broke it. So hopefully, touch wood, if we've got any wood, that this will be okay. That is locked really nice. You can feel it, it's bit into the metal. Yes, that's really good. Like that, that's gone into there really well. Again, well, let's just check for it's all still free. That's good. Next step. So we now have the new style motor mount. Does look like it might bend, doesn't it, just with that on there, but we will see. Put the motor guard on the top like that, and then it's, what is it, 3 12mm screws just hold that on. Now we come to the slipper assembly. There's one bit here I really like, and there's one bit here I don't like. First of all, the bit I like, they've got rid of that horrible bit where you push the pin through. Never did like that bit. So that still goes through there like so, and that does look a much better fit. But I don't like, they've included the white slipper pads, which I've never really got on as well with as the sort of the brown ones. They seem to be better, but we're building this kit. Let's see what happens. So we put our first plate on. We've then got our, what we call the modified spur gear, which is the bigger spur gear. One plate goes in there, goes on like that. You then put the other pad on the back. Then that sits into the recesses like so. That goes on there, and then hopefully we get that to go through there like so. Now see that pad's properly located on there as it should. We've then got 2 different washers. Now we've got the first one, the double stepped one, goes on first. And we have the big side out so it fits onto the spring like so. Doesn't make it particularly clear in the instructions, but that is how it goes on. And then the other one goes on there, so you've got the flat face out, and then you have a flanged nut, 5.5mm, and I'm going to do it up so the nut is level with the end of the thread, and then we'll just feel that. Nice, feels nice. And now let's just do a comparison how much it moves the motor compared to the other car. So guys, I don't know if you can see how much further that moves it. This effectively has got the the laid back gearbox on it, so it moves it forward a little bit more than that, but you can see how much further that motor comes forward. So we've now got our shock tower. I'm going to mount it as the kit on the one out. No, we've got to put the shock tower protector on first. I suppose it's a little bit of an improvement over the previous one, but perhaps still the cheapest looking part of the kit in my opinion. It says to thread lock these on. I'm actually not going to bother because it gets changed quite regularly as a setup tuning aid, and I don't think you need to. Never had them come undone. Don't even know if it told you to thread lock them in the previous manual, in the previous car. Nice and tight, not over tight, don't need to start crushing things. It then goes on our gearbox like so, with the wing mount. Let's find the wing mount. Right, so there's the wing mount, but I'm going to put the tower on first. We've got 4 12mm screws to hold that on. Then the wing mount goes on here, and as you can see, it actually sits into a little recess there as well, which is nice. So it locks it all together. We have a 12mm bolt into there, which I'm going to start off. I haven't done any of the front tower ones tight yet either. Break off a bit of moulding between them, and we've got this little body shell mount apparently, which goes on there. No, it actually goes on there, doesn't it? So I need to take those 2 screws out. So I'm going to put these ones in to hold it, and then we will put those ones in. And there it is, ready to go back, or ready to go on the chassis. Now, if you're moving this car about, be careful not to lose these washers. They're easy to fall off because they're not fixed. But basically, if you can see, you've got to, there we go, we've already knocked one off. The D block has got to tuck onto, and that's all locked into place. And now we've got 8 screw holes to fill with, what are they, M3 by 8mm. So I'll get a couple of them started off by hand. And there we go, that is that all mounted. Let's check your arms are all free. They should drop down freely. They do, look at that. And you can put no waterfall. Whereas the old car had the waterfall down there. This one has not got it, very much like the Schumacher cars. So we'll have to see whether that's a good or bad choice. And there is actually no holes in the chassis even to add one on. Let's see what it's like. But that is coming on nicely now. So the rear hub assembly, you get 2 options. You get a high roll centre, which has got HRC stamped on it, and a what they call a low roll centre, I assume, which has got nothing on it. Again, we're building up as kit. We're going to go with the high roll centre. Let's just pop the bearings in. That's just one less thing laying about on the bench. That is then all the bearings used up. And then we have to put on the top link mounts. Now these are different to what we had before, aren't they? They weren't blue. I'm sure they were black before. They're handed again, so you can put them either way around. We're going to put them that way round with a 2mm washer on there like that, and there are 1mm washers in this pack as well, but that's not for this stage. There we go. Right, now I am going to thread lock it. For some strange reason I find it easier to get it assembled like this, and then back one of the screws out, put a small dab on. That's that one done. We then have a ball stud with a 1mm washer. Again, drop of thread lock on there, and that winds into there. Little tip, if you take out that spacer, be careful you don't pin that ball stud goes down further. Make sure you don't pinch this bearing. On the old car you could do that quite easily. Doesn't look like so much of a problem on this car. So that's one side done, and that is both of them done. The other option now, we just need to put in these the rear axle inserts. We are going, as the manual, number 2 up. And what they also give the option to do is to put a grub screw in here, which just takes out any slack that will be where you put the insert in to the hub carrier. Now, a little tip, when you're putting these in, you mustn't over tighten. If you over tighten them, you will deform this and it won't move freely, and you might have to buy a new insert. So what I've done, I've actually just left the insert half out so I can see roughly it just wants to be just proud of the top of there, and then you know it's clamped it. See, I can see there it's clamped, it won't move in. So I now know how far to put these set screws in. And to test it, look, we just put the pin through it and look, it moves freely. If you don't do that, so this is why we do these videos, guys. Look, I've messed this one up. Look, it's tight. I've screwed one of them in too far, so I've got to clean that out. Hopefully, guys, I have managed to ream that out, so that does now spin free. Not quite as free as I like, but it's free. That will soon free up on there. So that's that done. Don't do that. Don't over tighten those. Right, so onto the drive shafts. I'm a little disappointed they didn't take the opportunity to make these pins bigger. I know they've made these balls slightly bigger, but they haven't made these pins any bigger, which is a bit of a shame. I always think that's a bit of a weak point on those. But anyway, the way I build these up, I put a small amount of grease on there, put it in one side, spin it around, put it in the other side, then put it on there, and then the pin, rather fiddly, the pin will then go in there like so. Wipe off any excess grease. Now, another option here is actually to build this up dry and then put a small amount of bearing oil in there. If you're somewhere it's very dusty, the oil hopefully should cause less sort of dirt to stick to it than the grease does. And obviously this then passes through there. Another pin on there. We throw that one on the floor. And we throw that one. Again, I thought they might have made these pins a bit bigger, but no, they haven't bothered. They just kept all this the same. Then that on there. And what is the golden rule when you're doing this bit? Don't over tighten these, because they will strip really easily. Did do a little video on how to solve that problem, but that's one side done. Same with the other side. Actually, just one little tip, make sure you push the face of the hex as hard as you can to the axle or into the hub, and when you tighten up you then won't have any play there. Just make sure that spins freely. So we have those two done, and now it's just a case of assembling it all onto the car. This goes in from the back, and we've got a hub spacer which goes either side, so we put one in. Let's take that out, put one in there first like so. Then through your hub, one in, if you can see, in front, like so, a nut on there. Now theoretically, the way this is machined, you should be able to do this up completely tight, but that needs to be free, and that is. But if there's a little bit of binding there, you can just back this off a fraction, and if that solves that binding, I mean, that's perfectly tight and it's fine. But you just need to make sure that that all drops down under its own weight, and it does. So on with the other side. And there we go. The last steps that I've just done, I've just popped on the anti-roll bar links which go under the drive shafts. Obviously they're flat in the back, so there's no top links on there, but now it's on to making up those top links, and we've got a nifty little tool to help with that. So guys, we're on to step 8 or bag 8, which is the turnbuckles. I hate this part, but we have some things to make it easier. We've got a 3D printed ball stud socket holder here, which I'll show you what we do with that in a minute. If there's any interest on that, we can probably put it on eBay. We may even share the STL for that. I mean, it's a very, very simple thing to design up. But what we do, we use this to wind the threads in all the way to make it much easier when you adjust. And I'll show you what I mean. So we have a drill here with one of the turnbuckles in, and I've set it so that it's just the maximum amount of length that you want it to go into that ball stud. We've already got one in there. I'm going to do a small amount of any lubricant, but I might as well use the black grease as this is what we have available. Then slowly I'm going to wind that in almost to there, so we know you're never going to want to put it in any further than that. Just got to repeat that on all the others. So that's them all done, and now it is just a simple case of winding on all the ball studs. So we've done all the turnbuckles. That tool, excellent little tool. Wish I'd have designed it up much earlier in my car building career. Made it so much easier. Associated do give you a nice little turnbuckle spanner, and on this car, I should have mentioned this, you've actually got the bigger ball studs, but they are actually handed, I suppose. You can only pop them in from one side. One side is bigger than the other, which is fine on the straight bits. You can just turn them around if you've got them wrong, but you must make sure you've got the correct hand on there, whether it's because you can't obviously turn that one round, it'll be the wrong hand. So just make sure you get that right, and then you want to orientate the notch all the same side on the car, so you turn a turnbuckle and it's the same way to make it shorter or longer on the car. You move it forward to make it longer or backwards to make it shorter. That's generally the way I have it set up. Some people don't, but I like it that way. So we're now just going to pop these on the car. That's certainly one thing I noticed with them. They're a lot harder to pop on than the older ones, so they're much better, these bigger ball joints. And what I'm now going to do is I'm now just going to check these lengths here are all exactly as they say in the book, but obviously we'll do the final camber setup and toe setup when the car is ready. So guys, the next step is shock absorbers. We have one laid out here, and the tools you'll need, recommend if you haven't got any, get some shock pliers. It just makes building shocks so much easier. But I'm not going to cover building shocks in this big video. I'm going to do that as a separate breakout video, so it's easier to find, because rebuilding shocks and servicing shocks is going to be one of the biggest things you're going to do if you're racing one of these cars, or any type of RC car really competitively. So guys, if you have checked out the building of these shocks, we will now look at how we fit them on the car. It's pretty straightforward. Front ones, I always put this bleed screw to the inside of the car. Someone told me it once because it then stays in contact with the oil. I don't know how true that is, but that's just always what I do. So that's simple. It goes on there like that. Nut on there. Same on the other side. Now, rather interestingly, on the front they recommend putting it on the outside hole. That's interesting. I've always run it on the middle hole. So we're doing it as kit, so we will do it as the book says, and we always put the larger part of the flange of the shock to the, well, I always put it to the back of the car. I don't know if that's right, because that's one thing I've never actually worked out what's right and what's wrong there. So they go in there, and then we just nip them up. Don't over tighten them, because you'll strip those threads. Rears, even more straightforward. One on there, and we can even put the bottom on at the same time. And the flange on here, it does say the flange, that big flange there, needs to go to the back of the car. That was always a part there where if you weren't careful, the roll bar fouled the shock. But with this new roll bar situation, you're never going to get that problem. So that's good. That's an improvement. Shocks on. Two things I've noticed. The shock standoffs are the same. It appears they're the same front and rear, whereas the B6 had slightly smaller ones on the front. So that's, don't know, the most difference. And also, I did mention it in the shock build video, which is a separate video. When you're building up the shocks, it has these white fibre washers, which are spacers. Don't get them mixed up with your shock O-rings or X-wings or X-things or whatever they call them, because your shocks won't work. So guys, just the finishing touches now. We will put a motor in it, just so you can see what it looks like. It does come with these nice screws for the motor. They've got a nice big head on, so you don't need a separate washer. Now we've got the thing that holds this in, the LiPo, the battery. Now there's two different batteries. You've got an offset and a normal. We're just going to go with the normal one. Basically just adjust the position that the battery sits in the car. I don't know if you can see, it has actually got a nice little marker there, so you can see what actual number you're on. That's like that design. And it also comes with these two different height posts. So the low profile, which is what we're using, is a shorter post. But if you're using bigger batteries, like I know the stock guys do, so they've got the high voltage, you've got the bigger posts. And depending on which one of these you're using, you use a longer or shorter screw. Looks pretty straightforward to go together. Just got the little tab that goes through there, and it also has a little rubber washer. That just goes in there like so. Nut then goes on there. Tighten that up. And because you've got that little washer under there, that turns nice and it doesn't undo the bolt. It's a nice little design, isn't it? There's the other one. Now we'll put them in the car. We'll go with mid battery position. There we go. There's the battery holder in. How well does my battery go in? Lovely. That's not going anywhere. Because the old design had the, obviously it's quicker to move the battery about the old design, but I thought it tweaked the chassis. You could tweak the chassis because it was braced across. I never really liked that. Now, obviously we haven't cut out the rear wing, but we will just mount the rear wing assembly. Like on the other car, you've got options of ways of having this angled, depending on which way you put that round, whether you put it on top of the wing, underneath the wing. So we're nearly there. I'll just chuck some wheels on it and then we can see the finished article. I have noticed, don't know if you can see, the LiPo actually, there's a gap under there. So as I always use these same LiPos, I'm probably just going to machine a little bit off there so that sits down a bit lower. Perhaps that's a little bit of flaw in the design, I don't know, but obviously I've got to accommodate for different LiPos, etc, etc. Let's chuck some wheels on it, last bit, and then we'll see what she looks like. And there we go. B7 is finished. Overall thoughts, kit goes together well. Tolerances on it are super good. A couple of minor things we didn't like on the kit, as we noted as we went through it. And certainly this KPI, even just when I was putting the wheels on, you can feel it. It just makes the steering feel completely different. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like on the track. So guys, if you like that, click on the subscribe button. We have loads more videos on this and our big scale stuff coming soon.